Hi, I am Lindsay Jordan, the founder and CEO of Write On Fundraising. It is our 6-year anniversary or birthday, which is just wild to me. I cannot believe it's 6 years. And in honor of that, I am answering a whole bunch of questions today about all kinds of things, questions from our staff, from our clients, all about fundraising, starting a business, and what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Is that it is first and probably most obviously a double entendre. That it is the word write, like write with a pen spelled out. And it is a phrase, write on, that it was used a lot in different movements throughout the ages to kind of just mean like, yeah, I'm on board with that. I've got your back. I'm an ally. And the reason that I wanted to pick a name like Write On Fundraising is when I was thinking first about what to call the company, I just didn't want to name it after myself. I knew that it was time to start my own organization when two things happened. I think this is different for everybody, but for me personally, the intersection of two very important things happened, and that kind of served as the trigger point for me to realize, hey, it's time to start thinking seriously about my impact in the world and what I want to do. The first thing that happened is that I felt like I had maxed out my career. I'm going to be honest, there's not a lot of career trajectory for professional fundraisers. In most cases, once you become a director of development, if you don't want to become a CEO or an executive director, which I didn't, I love fundraising and I wanted to keep fundraising. If you don't have a job lined up as, maybe working for a foundation or going into consulting or becoming a CEO, there's just not a lot of options. And I knew that more than anything else, I wanted to keep fundraising. And I did not, I was 35-ish at the time. I also knew that I didn't want to spend the next 25, 30 years of my career just bouncing from one nonprofit to another nonprofit. And that happens to a lot of professional fundraisers who, they kind of come up fast. They become a director of development relatively early in their career. They're thrown into the deep end and they do a great job. And pretty quickly they come up against, wow, what do I do next? What is the next thing for me? What does my career advancement look like? So that was the first part of the intersection. The second part of the intersection is honestly, after 10 years of fundraising, I was to the point where I was at burnout. I had seen a lot of things go sideways in the nonprofit sector. I had seen a lot of really talented fundraisers kind of spin out. I had seen all kinds of bad behavior from donors. I had experienced what I'm going to call some toxicity that is present in the nonprofit sector. And I had gotten to a point with it where I thought, you know what, this has to change. In order for me to be successful and to feel fulfilled as a fundraiser, how fundraising happens needs to change. So it was really the intersection of those two things. It was the right time in my career, as in I didn't want to be a nonprofit CEO or executive director, and I needed to figure out what I wanted for myself, and just feeling like if things were going to really change, that I needed to be a part of that change. And once those two things crossed, there was no turning back. For the first 3 years of running Write On Fundraising, I honestly thought I had to be doing it wrong, that I was messing up so badly, and I didn't even know the extent to how badly I was messing up. And that is because a lot of the messaging directed towards entrepreneurs and people starting businesses for the first time is, this is so hard. You are never going to sleep again. You are going to eat ramen noodles for the next 25 years. It's very like doomsday messaging, and that's very scary. And that was not my experience. we had amazing clients and amazing team members since almost the beginning. The first year of Write On Fundraising, I made more money than I had ever made in my life. And the impact was unbelievable. The amount of free time I had with my family, I was able to go on vacations and not have to, rob Peter to pay Paul, and, all the tricks that we do in the nonprofit sector to make sure that we have enough time to leave. And when we get back, it's not going to be a fire escape. And there are just, I feel like, a lot of scary stories about entrepreneurialism. And because that wasn't my experience, I felt like, oh, I'm screwing this up. The shoe is gonna, the bottom is gonna drop. The shoe is gonna fall at any moment. And it took me a really long time to realize, no, we know who we are. We know who we serve. We're in an important space and we do good work. And that's why our experience has been different. And it took a while for me to accept that it didn't have to be as hard as everybody had painted it out to be. Oh man, there are a lot of memorable grant awards, especially early on. Like every win we got was a huge celebration because it was so exciting, but there were definitely a couple that I was really proud of. I remember for one of our first clients, they had a really well-established grants program and did amazing work in the community. And we were able to work with them to bring some funders back who had left. I mean, this is really common in the nonprofit sector. You have shakeups internally and changes in leadership. And, sometimes that means more donors coming in. Sometimes that means donors make an exit for a little while. In the case of this particular organization, there had been a leadership change and a couple of donors had walked out the door. And we were able to work with new leadership to show how they could build trust and put to rest some of the assumptions or just kind of the story that was being told out in the community that wasn't true. And that cultivation and repair of relationships was really meaningful to watch happen, because you could see it meant as much to the donor as it meant to the nonprofit. And they were a great fit. I mean, there was no reason for them to not be working together. And so that, obviously the money was great. The donation was fantastic, but being able to bring organizations and funders together, especially where there had been a previous split, was particularly meaningful, especially for a young company who was still trying to kind of, establish our reputation and show what we could do in the community as well. So there is these dueling ideas that you hear a lot in philanthropy. And one of them is mission first. Mission first is the idea that without the mission, the organization does not exist. And then there is this other conflicting ideology that is no money, no mission. And that is, if you don't have money to support what you want to do, it doesn't really matter what you want to do. And there's typically a debate about those things, right? That happens when you hear people using them. One is on the money side, one is on the program side. That is, I think, really harmful binary thinking. I think more important than either of those things, and something that is largely overlooked in nonprofit management, is culture. If you have an incredible mission and great impact, or if you're able to raise egads of money for the mission that you represent, but have a crappy culture in either situation, then you are not going to be as effective as you want to be in serving the people in the community, because you're going to be dealing with things like overreach on the board of directors, high employee turnover, low morale on your staff, leadership problems within your team, leadership that doesn't get along with each other, a team that has no accountability. You have to start with culture. Culture is everything. If you build a culture that is reflective of an organization you want to be a part of and that truly serves the people that you're set up to serve, then you will be successful. Mission follows, money follows. But if you do not have culture, you will never have an effective nonprofit. I could be wrong, but it is my opinion that work-life balance is a total farce. That is not a thing. And I'm just going to kind of lay it out. I hear a lot of people talk about work-life balance. I had a friend who was just telling me about a panel that she was watching that was on work-life balance. One person was like, well, I have a husband that helps me do X and Y and Z, and I'm able to do da 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 da, without even considering that there are plenty of single moms or just single people who manage the exact same workload and all of the same responsibilities and do so without someone there who is there to help them. I think there's a real lack of recognition and empathy when we talk about work-life balance, about the fact that we live different lives and we balance different things, and there is no one way that success is supposed to look like. I will tell you candidly that I don't strive for work-life balance. There are times when work requires my attention. I'm going to say there are seasons, because in my experience, these things tend to ebb and flow in seasons. So there are seasons in which big things are happening at work and more of my time and attention is needed in that space. But that's the exception for me. That is not the rule. My family and my personal time comes before work every single day of the week. I'm going to make that school play. I'm going to make that soccer game. I'm going to make that PTA meeting. I'm going to go get a massage. I'm going to sit down and read a book instead of checking my email. I think that people who are obsessed with work-life balance are putting way too much emphasis on work. Work is work, and it's something that's supposed to happen during the day. And it's not that can't be extremely meaningful and impactful in the community. My work-life balance is that my work stays at work and that I have healthy boundaries built around it so it doesn't seep into my personal life. Does that mean there's not times where I'm working long hours and doing big projects? Absolutely. Those are seasons of life, but they are not the norm for me. They are the exception. It's been a pretty great 6 years. We've accomplished a lot, and I have a lot of amazing members of my team, staff members, to thank for that success. Where we go next is all about our theory of change. So Write On Fundraising has a 4-part theory of change, just like the nonprofits that we work with. The first part of that theory of change is really a representation of the first 6 years of Write On Fundraising, which was to create a company, a fundraising company that served nonprofits that was highly effective. We have raised over $160 million, probably coming up on $170 million in the 6 years' time. I love the feedback I get from our clients about our team. That's a true partnership. There's mutual trust and respect there. And that's one of the reasons why we're so effective. So the first part of the theory of change was to just build a great company, build a great culture, bring in all these folks who I would love to work with, right? Who I would love to be on a team with. And then from there, the next piece of the puzzle is expanding that influence. So as we move forward, that's the next piece that we're working on, is expanding our influence. What does it mean to bring the ideology of Write On Fundraising into new parts of the country, into new cultures. Our grant writer apprenticeship program is a really big piece of expanding our influence, as it's very important to us to expand the talent and hiring pipeline to people who are typically left out of that process, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Beyond expanding our influence, we then want to leverage that power. So we're not here just to raise money. We are here to change how money gets raised. And we have a lot of ways that we want to do that. We have a lot of legislation that we want to influence to bring sustainable, meaningful change to philanthropy. So the third piece of the puzzle is leveraging that influence so that we can create change. And then the last piece of the theory of change is making the change, right? So the first 6 years of Write On, we really worked on the centerpiece and we did a great job at it. Now we are in the next phase, which is expanding our influence, then leveraging the power, and then bringing real change to philanthropy. And I'm so excited. Obviously, that's a huge mission. That's not something I could ever do by myself. It's not something that Write On Fundraising could do by itself. So we're talking about lots of collaborations, lots of partnerships, lots of people. And that is, honestly, that's super exciting. That gets me jumping out of bed in the morning. I'm excited to be a part of that change. And I am super excited about the first 6 years of Write On, knocking it out of the park and setting us up to be successful. If I could share a message with the nonprofit community at large, donors, nonprofits, community activists, everybody, it would be to look to your left and look to your right and figure out who else cares about what you care about or is doing the thing that you want to do, and link arms. There is an idea that nonprofits shouldn't compete with each other. And at the core, I agree with that. I think that we should be collaborating for greater impact. I also believe it's not a bad thing for nonprofits who do something really, really well to be rewarded for doing something really, really well. But we don't want to be gatekeepers with that, right? We don't want to just do something really well and then never share that with anybody else. A rising tide really does lift all boats. And if there's one thing I think the nonprofit sector could do better for the benefit of everyone that we serve, it's to spend less time tunnel visioning down into our own space and more time with our head up, looking around to see who's giving to similar causes, who's doing similar work. How do we create opportunities to lift each other up and to serve our people better, and really to create an ecosystem with greater impact? Because at the end of the day, it's not about just a single nonprofit. No single one nonprofit can fix an entire issue. No single one profit's going to solve food scarcity or help get every single person experiencing homelessness into a home. It's a collective, collaborative effort. And as long as we're only focused on our little piece of it, we miss the opportunity to really have an impact and be part of a greater systemic change. And at the end of the day, I think that's really why we're in this, right? That's really why we chose the nonprofit sector, was because we wanted to create big change, big impact. And to do that, we have to spend more time looking each other in the eye and talking about what we're doing.